NASA found something on Mars in 1976 that shook everything. Its discovery ignited a mystery that has perplexed millions for nearly 50 years. Now, newly discovered evidence reveals a forbidden connection between Mars and Earth. Ancient pyramids across our world mirror structures on Mars with incredible precision. The truth about our shared origins will shatter everything you know. Stay until the very end for the most jaw-dropping critical reveal. A single photograph from NASA's Viking 1 orbiter ignited a profound mystery. It was beamed back to Earth on July 20, 1976. The probe documented an anomaly over Mars's Cydonia territory, defying immediate explanation. A colossal formation emerged from Mars's rusty terrain, unmistakably resembling a sculpted face. This face gazed into space, bearing an eerie, undeniable similarity to human features. Despite being coarse, shadowed, and enigmatic, architectural elements were present. Symmetrical eye sockets, a prominent nose, and a discernible mouth were clearly visible. This monumental visage, the face on Mars, spanned nearly 2 miles. Was it a trick of light or an artificially crafted structure on the Martian landscape? If artificial, an unknown ancient intelligence meticulously carved this into Mars. Who were its creators? In what epoch was this monumental face fashioned? NASA's immediate response was dismissive. Merely an optical illusion, they claimed. They posited pareidolia, a human tendency to perceive familiar patterns in random stimuli. Just wine-sculpted rock formations, altered by eons of erosion, NASA insisted. But the face on Mars was not isolated. The narrative takes a fascinating turn. Surrounding it were myriad geometric formations, betraying no natural geological origin. Numerous pyramidal structures, meticulously organized and unequivocally purposeful, surrounded the face. The largest pyramid rested approximately 10 miles away, suggesting an intentional connection. This calculated relationship implied a deliberate, sophisticated design on the Martian surface. Researchers analyzed Cydonia, measuring angles, calculating proportions, and charting colossal structures. The pyramids at Cydonia were aligned with specific celestial coordinates. The angles formed between them resonated with fundamental mathematical constants. These sophisticated geometrical relationships, indicative of advanced design principles, were found in only one other known location within our solar system, Earth. More precisely, the Giza Plateau in Egypt. Pause for a moment and consider the profound significance of this revelation. We encounter pyramids on Mars. We discover pyramids on Earth. Both sets of structures appear to encode highly advanced mathematical knowledge. Both demonstrate precise alignment with stellar coordinates. The statistical probability of such a profound congruence being mere coincidence diminishes dramatically with each piece of corroborating evidence. Let us delve into an even more specific parallel. The angle 19.5 degrees emerges repeatedly in both planetary locations. On Mars, at Cydonia, several major structures exhibit alignment along this particular latitude. On Earth, at Giza, internal shafts within the Great Pyramid point to specific stars at angles that incorporate this identical measurement, 19.5 degrees. It is woven into the external placement of these colossal monuments, and it is intrinsically linked to their internal architecture. This is far from a casual or random numerical occurrence. In the realm of physics, 19.5 degrees denotes the tetrahedral latitude, a point theorized to represent maximum energy exchange on a rotating sphere. How could ancient Egyptian builders, wielding only rudimentary copper tools and stone hammers around 2500 BC, have possibly encoded such an advanced mathematical constant into structures designed to endure for millennia? Or perhaps the question is not how they did it, but if they did it. What if they were not the original architects at all? What if they merely inherited these sophisticated designs from a predecessor? from an intelligence that had already mastered this profound knowledge elsewhere before transplanting it to Earth. The Great Pyramid at Giza, a marvel of ancient engineering, weighs approximately 6 million tons. It incorporates roughly 2.3 million individual stone blocks, some of which exceed 70 tons in weight. It was oriented to true north with an astonishing accuracy of 3/60ths of a single degree. Mainstream archaeology posits that the ancient Egyptians achieved this monumental feat without the aid of the wheel, without iron tools, and without any technology we would recognize as advanced. The very dimensions of this structure encode the mathematical constant pi. It integrates the golden ratio. It functions as a precise scale model of Earth's northern hemisphere. And yet, according to conventional archaeological interpretation, its sole purpose was to serve as a tomb. A tomb, however, devoid of any mummy, any treasure, or any hieroglyphics that explain its purpose. Just empty chambers and shafts that undeniably point toward specific stars. These are the same stars that the Cydonia structures on Mars appear to reference. Orion, Sirius, the luminous belt stars that ancient Egyptians revered as the celestial dwelling place of Osiris, their deity of resurrection and the afterlife. The Egyptians were not merely constructing monuments. They were crafting a message. They painstakingly encoded critical information into durable stone, ensuring its survival through any potential catastrophe, any erosion of knowledge, any coming dark age. But what if that encoded information was more than data? What if it was a memory? What if the pyramids on Earth were erected by the last survivors, recalling another home, another world where identical structures had once stood before cataclysm tore everything apart? Let us examine the collective evidence for a moment. Stripped of all preconceptions, we observe congruent structures on two distinct planets, separated by millions of miles of void, sharing striking architectural similarities and identical mathematical relationships. We possess ancient Egyptian texts that consistently describe their gods as originating from the stars. We currently lack any satisfactory explanation for how purportedly primitive civilizations achieved engineering feats that continue to challenge modern capabilities. We have Mars, a planet that scientists now definitively confirm once harbored liquid water, sustained a substantial atmosphere, and offered conditions potentially conducive to life. And then something cataclysmic befell Mars. Its atmosphere was violently stripped away. Its vast water reserves vanished. Its protective magnetic field collapsed. The planet in essence died. But what if it wasn't an empty death? What if there was sufficient time for an exodus? Time to salvage knowledge, preserve culture, evacuate survivors, and ultimately to sow their existence elsewhere. Somewhere with azure skies, flowing waters, and the promise of a fresh start. Here is what stands as confirmed fact. Mars once possessed all the requisites for the development of complex life. Earth features pyramids and ancient structures that defy simplistic explanations. Both planetary locations exhibit specific mathematical and astronomical alignments. Ancient human cultures, across diverse geographies, consistently recount their civilizing deities, descending from the sky. Consider this: what if the pyramids on Earth are not solemn monuments to the deceased, but rather profound memorials to the departed? What if they mark not our future trajectory, but our ancient point of origin? What if Mars was not a distant future destination, but our long-forgotten ancient home? And what if the true architects of the pyramids were not primitive humans toiling with crude stone and rope, but the last survivors of a Martian civilization, meticulously inscribing their final testament into the only materials guaranteed to endure through the ages: stone, mathematics, astronomy, the eternal sciences that transcend planets and cultures. The face on Mars gazes upward into the cosmos. The pyramids of Giza point toward Orion, and between them lies a narrative that, if substantiated, would fundamentally rewrite everything we believe we know about human origins, about consciousness, and about our intrinsic place within the universe. We may not simply be scrutinizing archaeological enigmas. We might be deciphering a message from our earliest ancestors etched into the very fabric of two worlds, patiently awaiting our comprehension. Are we prepared to truly read it? Mars was not always the frigid, barren desert observed today. This is not speculative conjecture. It is established scientific fact, corroborated by decades of robotic exploration and vast datasets amassed by NASA, the European Space Agency, and numerous Mars missions. The question is not whether Mars once possessed conditions suitable for life. The pivotal question is what became of that life, and did any of it manage to escape before the planet succumbed? In 2015, NASA made a groundbreaking announcement that reverberated globally, yet quickly faded from mainstream memory. They confirmed, definitively, that liquid water continues to flow on Mars in the present day, not merely ancient, desiccated riverbeds, but actual, ephemeral streams of liquid water coursing down crater walls during the Martian summer. If liquid water can persist now, on a planet with a tenuous atmosphere and brutal surface conditions, envision Mars billions of years ago, when it boasted a thick, protective atmosphere, moderate temperatures, and immense oceans covering a significant portion of its northern hemisphere. The MAVEN mission, which achieved Martian orbit in September 2014, provided the definitive answer to one of the planet's most enduring mysteries, the fate of its atmosphere. The data unequivocally showed that Mars once possessed an atmosphere as dense as Earth's, perhaps even thicker. However, approximately 3.7 billion years ago, the planet's global magnetic field abruptly collapsed. Stripped of this crucial protective shield, the relentless solar wind commenced eroding the atmosphere at a catastrophic rate. Over subsequent millions of years, Mars lost an astonishing 99% of its atmospheric mass. Its vast oceans vaporized into space. Its rivers dried up. The planet froze solid. But here is the critical point for our investigation. This cataclysmic process transpired over an immense duration, millions of years. Had intelligent life evolved on Mars during its habitable period, there would have been ample time to foresee the impending disaster, time to adapt, to construct subterranean shelters, to develop advanced technology, to meticulously plan an exodus, time ultimately to depart. Now let us turn to the structures currently visible on Mars. Formations that should not exist if Mars has always been a sterile rock shaped solely by aeolian and geological forces. The Cydonia region represents merely the initial point of inquiry. In an area designated Elysium, high-resolution satellite imagery has unveiled what appears to be an extensive pyramid complex. Not a singular pyramid, but multiple pyramidal structures arranged in distinct geometric patterns. These are not minor formations. Some of these colossal structures ascend hundreds of feet above the surrounding terrain. Their sides exhibit angles and sharp edges that remain remarkably defined. Despite the supposed billions of years of erosion, their faces are precisely aligned with cardinal directions. The Martian structures consistently exhibit symmetry. They display recurring angles. They demonstrate preferential positioning on elevated ground, offering clear lines of sight to other formations within the region. In the area designated Galaxia's Chaos, orbital cameras have captured images of what researchers have provocatively nicknamed the Inca City. This is a sprawling rectangular formation, extending for miles, characterized by remarkably straight edges, precise right angles, and internal divisions that bear an uncanny resemblance to urban blocks or meticulously organized agricultural plots. NASA's official explanation attributes these to sand dunes shaped by prevailing wind patterns. Yet, sand dunes do not typically form perfect right angles. They do not spontaneously generate long straight walls stretching for kilometers. They do not naturally arrange themselves into grid-like patterns. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, equipped with the most advanced camera ever deployed to another planet, has acquired thousands of high-resolution images revealing numerous anomalies that resist facile explanation. There are formations that evoke collapsed archways, structures reminiscent of tumbled columns, and intricate patterns on crater floors that suggest deliberate tiling or paving. A majority of these images are publicly accessible. NASA publishes them without explicit commentary, leaving their interpretation open to individual observers. And it is precisely here that the controversy intensifies. When independent researchers enhance these images, apply diverse filters, or examine them from varied perspectives, details emerge that the raw images initially obscure. Shadows disclose greater depth and dimension. Texture analysis suggests surfaces that are too smooth, too uniform, to be products of natural rock weathering. Geometric analysis consistently reveals patterns that repeat across multiple sites, strongly suggesting underlying common design principles. Consider, for instance, the so-called D&M pyramid in Cydonia. This is a five-sided structure, nearly 2 miles across at its base, ascending almost half a mile above the surrounding plain. Five-sided pyramids are exceedingly rare in natural geological formations. Their very existence necessitates specific mathematical relationships between angles and proportions. Yet, this formation maintains bilateral symmetry. Its edges align precisely with other structures within the Cydonia complex. When researchers meticulously calculated the angles between the D&M pyramid, the face and other proximate formations, they discovered compelling astronomical alignments, correlating with specific stellar configurations, as they would have appeared from Mars's surface thousands, or even millions of years ago. Could this all be a grand coincidence? Could the random forces of wind and water, acting over billions of years, spontaneously generate multiple structures that just happen to encode mathematical constants, astronomical alignments, and precise geometric relationships? Statistically, the probability of such an occurrence approaches zero. However, definitively proving an artificial origin requires more than statistical probability. It necessitates direct investigation, landing there, drilling into these structures, examining them intimately. And that direct investigation has not yet transpired. What we do possess are the unalterable measurements, the raw data, the precise positions recorded by orbital instruments that are incapable of deception, and those measurements consistently reveal patterns that nature typically does not produce. Consider the pervasive issue of erosion. Mars has endured billions of years of exceptionally harsh conditions. Planet-encompassing dust storms, extreme temperature fluctuations, often exceeding 150 degrees Fahrenheit between Martian day and night, catastrophic meteor impacts that leave craters hundreds of miles in diameter. Any surface structures should logically be worn smooth, buried beneath layers of dust, or utterly obliterated. Yet in Cydonia, in Elysium, and in dozens of other documented locations, we observe formations exhibiting remarkably sharp edges, clearly defined angles, and distinct geometric shapes. This observation strongly implies one of two possibilities. Either these structures are far more recent than the surrounding terrain, or they were constructed from materials and with techniques that afford an erosion resistance far exceeding that of natural rock. There is yet another profound possibility that researchers have begun to seriously explore. What if the structures we can discern from orbit represent only the minuscule tip of a much grander hidden existence? Mars is permeated by vast networks of lava tubes, immense subterranean tunnels created by ancient volcanic activity. Some of these tubes are so gargantuan that they could comfortably house entire cities. They offer intrinsic protection from lethal radiation, extreme temperature swings, and surface erosion. If an intelligent civilization on Mars became aware of its planet's inexorable decline, the most logical and rational response would be to seek refuge underground. The surface structures we observe might thus be the last vestiges, the final, poignant monuments left behind by a people who retreated into the planet's depths as their world crumbled above them. NASA has indeed identified lava tube skylights near Pavonis Mons that measure over 600 feet across. Ground-penetrating radar data strongly suggests these tubes extend for miles underground, with ceiling heights potentially reaching 300 feet or more. These are not mere caverns. These are subterranean structures vast enough to accommodate substantial populations, cultivate agriculture, conduct manufacturing, everything a civilization would require to survive as its surface progressively became uninhabitable. And here is where the thread connects directly to Earth. When we examine ancient human structures, we frequently encounter the same recurring pattern: sprawling underground cities carved directly into solid rock. The Derinkoyu complex in Turkey, for example, descends 18 stories deep and possessed the capacity to shelter 20,000 people. This monumental undertaking was not a recent construction. Its precise origins are lost to the mists of prehistory. Why would ancient humans, lacking modern tools, expend immense effort excavating millions of tons of rock to create such extensive subterranean cities, unless they had acquired that crucial lesson from an earlier source? Unless they remembered, intrinsically, that when the surface becomes uninhabitable, one must delve deep beneath the earth. The accumulating evidence on Mars, while not yet constituting definitive proof of a past civilization, nevertheless builds a compelling case, one that warrants serious, unbiased investigation, rather than immediate dismissal. We are presented with a planet that was undeniably once habitable. We observe structures on its surface that display non-random intelligent patterns. We have ancient human civilizations on Earth that constructed remarkably similar structures and unequivocally claimed their profound knowledge originated from divine beings, from the sky, from somewhere beyond Earth. These disparate pieces of evidence coalesce, forming a coherent picture, if we are only willing to perceive them without the inherent biases of conventional thinking. Mars was once home to something. Whether that something was microbial life or an advanced intelligence remains the fundamental question, but the physical evidence, resting on that planet right now, vividly captured in thousands of orbital photographs, demands answers that geology alone cannot adequately provide. And if those structures are indeed artificial, if they were deliberately constructed by intelligent beings, then the next question becomes utterly unavoidable. Where did those beings go when their planet died? Let me reveal something that will forever alter your perception of the Great Pyramid. This colossal edifice, standing majestically on the Giza Plateau for over 4,000 years, is not merely a colossal stack of stones. It is in essence a sophisticated mathematical equation meticulously carved into 6 million tons of limestone and granite. And the intricate equation it embodies should, by all conventional understanding, be utterly beyond the capabilities of builders in 2500 BC. The Great Pyramid aligns to true north with an astounding accuracy of 3/60ths of 1 degree. To truly grasp this level of precision, consider that modern architects, employing laser technology and GPS systems, still contend to achieve such exactitude. The ancient Egyptians, we are told, accomplished this with rudimentary copper tools, wooden stakes and shadow measurements. Yet a fundamental flaw exists in this prevailing explanation. The alignment is not just remarkably close to true north, it is more accurate than the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, England, which was constructed in 1675 with all the advanced scientific instruments of the Renaissance period. How does a Bronze Age culture achieve a feat surpassing technologies developed millennia later? Furthermore, the pyramid rests at precisely 29.9792 degrees north latitude. Note that numerical sequence, 29.9792. Now consider the speed of light in a vacuum, measured in meters per second. The geographical coordinates of the Great Pyramid astonishingly match the numerical value of the speed of light to 5 decimal places. The speed of light, a fundamental constant of the universe, was not officially measured until 1850 by the French physicist Hippolyte Fizeau. It is encoded within the very location of a structure built 3,000 years before the scientific method even formally existed. Coincidence, the skeptics assert. Random chance. But the mathematical impossibilities do not cease there. The pyramid's original height, when multiplied by 1 billion, yields the approximate distance from Earth to the Sun. 93 million miles, the astronomical unit that defines our very position in the solar system. The perimeter of the pyramid's base, divided by twice its height, precisely reveals pi 3.141159, calculated to multiple decimal places. Pi was not formally calculated to such precision until the Greek mathematician Archimedes painstakingly derived it in 2000 BC, over 2,000 years after the pyramid had already been erected. The ratio of the pyramid's height to its base perimeter perfectly equals the ratio of a circle's radius to its circumference. This is not approximate geometry. This is exact mathematical encoding. Every measurement, every angle, every proportion meticulously integrates into a profound system of knowledge that utterly transcends the mere construction of a tomb. And yet we are expected to accept that this marvel was constructed by a civilization that had not even conceived of the wheel for construction purposes. A civilization whose official written records contain no blueprints, no technical specifications, no detailed instruction manuals for fabricating the most precisely engineered structure in the entire ancient world. Let us examine the colossal stones themselves, approximately 2.3 million blocks, each weighing, on average, 2.5 tons. Some of the massive granite blocks in the king's chamber weigh an astounding 70 tons. 70 tons. These gargantuan blocks were quarried at Aswan, situated 500 miles up the Nile River. They were then somehow transported to Giza, hoisted into position hundreds of feet above ground, and laid with tolerances measured in fractions of inches. Modern construction cranes can indeed lift 70 tons, but they necessitate steel cables, hydraulic systems, computer controls, and stable ground conditions. The ancient Egyptians, we are told, possessed only ropes woven from papyrus and date palm fibers, rudimentary wooden sledges, and copper saws. According to conventional archaeology, they moved these immense blocks using earthen ramps constructed from mud brick and limestone rubble. Engineers, attempting to replicate this feat, have consistently failed, not for lack of effort or resources, but because the underlying physics simply do not work. A ramp of sufficient length and gradual incline to haul 70-ton blocks to the height of the king's chamber would need to stretch over a mile long and contain a greater volume of material than the pyramid itself. No archaeological evidence of such ramps has ever been discovered. No debris fields of the requisite scale. No discernible tool marks on the stones indicating they were dragged across rough surfaces. What the stones do reveal, however, is something far more mysterious. The blocks fit together with such extraordinary tightness that it is impossible to insert a piece of paper between them. No mortar, no adhesive, simply stone pressed against stone with such astonishing precision that 4,000 years of seismic activity has failed to dislodge them. The corners remain perfectly true. The edges retain their remarkable sharpness. The entire structure has settled less than half an inch, despite resting on desert sand and bearing the immense weight of millions of tons. This is not Bronze Age technology. This is precision engineering that either rivals or definitively surpasses modern capabilities. Inside the pyramid, the level of precision escalates to become even more disquieting. The king's chamber is meticulously lined with granite blocks, some weighing up to 80 tons each, cut and polished to a finish of optical flatness. The chamber measures exactly 10 by 20 Egyptian royal cubits, with a height of 11-16 cubits. These are not arbitrary figures. They encode the golden ratio, the profound mathematical constant that manifests ubiquitously throughout nature in the spiral patterns of galaxies, the intricate structure of DNA, and the harmonious proportions of the human body. The coffer within the king's chamber, carved from a single formidable block of chocolate-colored granite, has been subjected to laser scanning equipment. Its internal dimensions have been precisely measured and found to correlate with the Ark of the Covenant, as described in the biblical book of Exodus. Its external volume, when multiplied by tooth, precisely equals its internal volume multiplied by pi. This profound level of mathematical integration does not occur by chance. Someone meticulously calculated these dimensions for a highly specific purpose. And then there are the shafts, 4 narrow passages, approximately 8 inches square, extending from both the king's chamber and the queen's chamber upwards through the immense body of the pyramid. For decades, archaeologists maintained these were simple air shafts, designed to ventilate the chambers during construction, Yet, they do not open to the exterior. They terminate just shy of the pyramid's outer surface, sealed by internal stone blocks. In 1964, astronomer Virginia Trimble and Egyptologist Alexander Badawi made a transformative discovery. They calculated the angle of the southern shaft originating from the king's chamber and projected its trajectory into the ancient night sky. The shaft pointed directly toward Orion's belt, precisely as it would have appeared in 2500 BC. The northern shaft, similarly, pointed toward the star Thuban, which served as the North Star during Egypt's Old Kingdom period. The shafts from the Queen's chamber performed an identical astronomical feat. The southern shaft aligned with Sirius, the brightest star in the sky and the celestial embodiment of the goddess Isis. The northern shaft precisely indicated the star Kokab in Ursa Minor. These were emphatically not ventilation passages. They were sophisticated stellar alignment mechanisms, meticulously constructed to connect the pyramid's internal chambers with specific, crucial points in the heavens. Why? What profound purpose could such a design serve? Unless the builders firmly believed the pharaoh's soul required a precise cosmic roadmap to the stars. Unless the pyramid itself was envisioned as a celestial machine, specifically engineered to facilitate a form of transformation or a journey that we no longer possess the cultural context to comprehend. But here is where the narrative becomes truly extraordinary. The Great Pyramid contains no hieroglyphics, none. Not a single wall inscription. No royal cartouche of the pharaoh ostensibly responsible for its construction. No religious texts, no prayers, no dedications. Every other Egyptian tomb discovered is extensively covered in hieroglyphics. Their walls are elaborately illustrated with scenes from the Book of the Dead, explicit instructions for the afterlife, and intricate spells and incantations intended to safeguard the deceased. The Great Pyramid, in stark contrast, contains absolute silence. The only mark ever purportedly found was a crude graffiti in a relieving chamber positioned above the king's chamber, allegedly bearing the name of Pharaoh Khufu. This mark was reportedly discovered by Colonel Howard Weiss in 1837, under circumstances that remain deeply suspicious. Weiss was under immense pressure to unearth something that would definitively date the pyramid and validate his costly expedition. The mark itself is rendered in red paint, which scientifically should not have endured thousands of years within that specific environment. Furthermore, the hieroglyphs exhibit distinct spelling errors, inconsistencies that would have been unthinkable for professional scribes of the Old Kingdom period. Many contemporary researchers strongly suspect Weiss fabricated the mark to cement his place in history. If we discount that questionable evidence, we are left with no definitive proof whatsoever regarding the pyramid's builders or its precise construction date. We possess only the monumental structure itself, defiantly challenging us to explain its existence with theories that prove insufficient and technologies that seem inadequate. Let me offer one final piece to this intricate puzzle. Acoustic engineers have made a remarkable discovery. The king's chamber resonates at a very specific frequency when sound is introduced. The chamber was designed, whether intentionally or through an astonishing serendipity, to amplify sound waves within the precise range of 100 to 1114 Hz. This frequency range is widely associated with states of deep meditation, altered states of consciousness, and what some researchers controversially term dimensional shifting. When researchers engaged in chanting within the king's chamber, the colossal granite walls vibrated, the massive coffer vibrated, the entire space transformed into a resonant chamber, converting auditory input into palpable physical vibration at frequencies known to profoundly affect human consciousness. Was this truly a tomb, or was it a transformation chamber, a place of burial, or an initiation temple for esoteric ceremonies we can no longer comprehend? The ancient Egyptians referred to the pyramid as Akhet, which translates to glorious light, not tomb, not monument, but light. What profound knowledge did they possess about this structure that we have so utterly forgotten? And why, if the Egyptians were indeed its architects, did their technological capabilities ostensibly decline afterward? The pyramids at Giza represent the absolute apex of pyramidal construction. Every subsequent pyramid built was smaller, cruder, and markedly less precise. Civilization is conventionally understood to progress over time, building upon accumulated knowledge to achieve ever greater feats. Egyptian pyramid building, paradoxically, moved in reverse. The earliest pyramids were undeniably the finest. Everything that followed was, in essence, an attempt to replicate something they no longer fully understood. Unless the Giza pyramids were not original Egyptian achievements at all, unless they were inherited structures, already ancient when the first human dynasties emerged, erected by an entirely different civilization that possessed a command of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering at a level that would not be paralleled again until the modern era. An intelligence that meticulously encoded its knowledge into stone, knowing it would endure long after its own civilization had vanished. The Great Pyramid is not a tomb, it is a profound message, and we are only just beginning to learn how to truly read it. The unique aspect of these pyramids pointing toward the stars, specifically to one constellation that reappears persistently across ancient cultures globally, a constellation the Egyptians believed served as the gateway to the afterlife, is that it might in fact be guiding us toward our true cosmic origin. In 1983, a Belgian construction engineer named Robert Bouwval found himself gazing up at the spectacular night sky, reclined on the sand of the Arabian desert. He was engaged in a project in Saudi Arabia, far from the light pollution of cities, where the stars blazed with an intensity rarely witnessed by modern humans. As his eyes fixed upon Orion's belt, those three brilliant stars that have captivated humanity since the dawn of recorded history, a sudden realization clicked into place within his mind. The three colossal pyramids at Giza, the three prominent stars in Orion's belt, and they aligned, not approximately, not vaguely, but with striking precision. The smallest star in Orion's belt, Mintaka, is slightly offset from the perfect diagonal line formed by the other two stars, Al-Nilam and Al-Nitak, and the smallest pyramid at Giza, the Pyramid of Menkora, is similarly subtly offset from the perfect diagonal formed by the other two grand pyramids. Bouwval returned home and immediately commenced his intricate calculations. He utilized astronomical software to meticulously reconstruct the night sky over ancient Egypt, accounting for the precession of the equinoxes, the gradual wobble of Earth's axis that incrementally shifts the apparent positions of stars over immense periods of time. What he subsequently uncovered would become widely known as the Orion correlation theory, one of the most controversial yet compelling concepts in alternative archaeology. The three pyramids at Giza, he proposed, are a precise terrestrial map of Orion's belt, positioned on the ground in exact correspondence to the stars as they appear in the celestial sphere. But the correlation extends even deeper. The majestic Nile River, flowing beside the pyramids, corresponds to the Milky Way, the cosmic river of stars that traverses Orion in the heavens. The other pyramids, scattered across the broader Egyptian landscape, when precisely plotted on a map, align with other stars within the wider Orion constellation and surrounding stellar formations. Egypt, according to this theory, is not merely a kingdom, it is a meticulously crafted mirror of the cosmos, constructed either by people intent on recreating heaven on earth, or by people who harbored a profound, genetic memory of a celestial home among the stars. Mainstream Egyptologists swiftly and aggressively denounced Bouwval's theory. They labeled it pseudoscience, a classic case of pareidolia, the desperate attempt to impose meaning where only random coincidence exists. Yet the precise numerical correlations remained undeniable. The alignment was not approximate, it was remarkably exact. When Bouwval extended his calculations, modeling the alignment using the positions of Orion's belt as they would have appeared in 10,500 BC, the congruence became even more precise. The pyramids were not merely reflecting Orion as it appeared during their supposed construction period. They were reflecting Orion as it was positioned during a much, much earlier epoch. That specific date frequently resurfaces in alternative research. It marks the approximate conclusion of the Younger Dryas period, a catastrophic global climate event characterized by a rapid plunge in global temperatures, the aggressive advance of ice sheets, and the widespread extinction of megafauna. It is also, crucially, the approximate period when geological evidence suggests the Great Sphinx shows definitive signs of water erosion, implying its existence during a time when the Sahara received regular heavy rainfall, an epoch thousands of years before the advent of the first Egyptian dynasty. But why Orion? Of all the countless constellations, of all the myriad stars, why did the ancient Egyptians exhibit such an intense preoccupation with this particular stellar formation? In Egyptian mythology, Orion was far more than a mere constellation. It was Osiris, the venerable deity of death and resurrection, the formidable lord of the underworld, the ultimate judge of souls. The pyramid texts, meticulously carved into the internal walls of later pyramids, explicitly state that the pharaoh's soul would ascend to Orion after death. "O king, you are this great star, the companion of Orion, who traverses the sky with Orion, who navigates the underworld with Osiris." The Egyptians profoundly believed their kings originated from Orion and returned to Orion, not metaphorically but literally. They constructed their most magnificent monuments as celestial gateways, as precise markers, as sophisticated technology designed to facilitate that sacred journey, and they aligned every aspect of these structures to ensure this profound cosmic connection remained unequivocally clear across millennia. Now this is where the narrative becomes truly unsettling. The Cydonia region on Mars exhibits the identical pattern. Independent researchers meticulously analyzing the Cydonia complex discovered that its major structures, the face, the DNM pyramid, and other formations within the region, align with Orion's belt in the same precise configuration as the Giza pyramids. The angles are identical. The proportional distances are the same. The subtle offset of the third Martian structure mirrors the offset of Mintaka and the Pyramid of Menkaure. Two distinct planets, two distinct sets of colossal structures, yet one singular stellar template. One might dismiss this as mere coincidence. One might argue that researchers are merely perceiving what they wish to see, imposing patterns onto random data. But at what critical juncture does the sheer accumulation of coincidences transcend into a discernible pattern? At what point does that pattern solidify into compelling evidence? The statistical odds of two entirely unrelated civilizations, on two entirely separate planets, both independently choosing Orion as their celestial focus, both constructing pyramids, and both arranging those pyramids in configurations that precisely mirror Orion's belt, are astronomically infinitesimal. The odds of them achieving this with the identical mathematical precision, the same subtle offset in the third structure, and the same proportional spacing, approach absolute zero, unless they were not in fact unrelated civilizations. Unless they were in essence the same civilization, meticulously inscribing the identical message in two distinct planetary locations, ensuring that if one world perished, the other would perpetually remember. Orion occupies a singularly unique position in the celestial sphere. It straddles the celestial equator, rendering it visible from every inhabited continent on Earth. In the northern hemisphere, it majestically dominates the winter skies. In the southern hemisphere, it appears inverted, yet equally prominent and recognizable. Ancient cultures spanning the globe, separated by immense oceans and vast millennia, universally acknowledged Orion and imbued it with profound, special significance. The Sumerians associated it with the legendary hero Gilgamesh. The Greeks envisioned the hunter Orion, tragically struck down by the gods for his hubris. The Maya revered it as the cosmic turtle, the primordial place where creation itself commenced. The Hopi people of North America recount ancestral stories of their forebears descending from the stars of Orion before arriving on Earth. Australian Aboriginal traditions speak of Orion as the magnificent great canoe that transported the first peoples across the celestial ocean. Why did virtually every ancient culture perceive Orion as an origin point? Why did they consistently link it to creation, to revered ancestors, to the ethereal place from which souls emerge and to which they ultimately return? Beyond mere mythology, there exists a compelling astronomical rationale for Orion's potential significance. The stars comprising Orion's belt are youthful, massive, intensely hot blue giants, consuming their nuclear fuel at prodigious rates. They are in essence colossal stellar factories, forging heavy elements through intense nuclear fusion, thereby seeding the vast galaxy with the fundamental building blocks of planets, ultimately life itself. The Orion Nebula, strikingly visible as a nebulous patch just beneath the belt, stands as one of the most active star-forming regions in Earth's immediate cosmic vicinity, a veritable cosmic nursery where new solar systems are continuously being born. If an advanced civilization sought to precisely mark the origin of life, the fundamental source of the very elements that compose our bodies, they would undeniably point to Orion. It transcends being merely a constellation. It is a celestial landmark, brilliantly visible across immense interstellar distances, instantly recognizable by any species that achieves astronomical proficiency. And this celestial landmark is not static. It is in motion. The stars themselves are not fixed. The phenomenon of precession causes the apparent positions of constellations to gradually shift over time, completing a full cycle approximately every 25,800 years. If one intends to astronomically date a structure with precision, one aligns it with specific stars, then meticulously calculates when that particular alignment was absolutely perfect. The Giza pyramids achieve a perfect alignment with Orion as it appeared in 10,500 BC. The internal shafts within the Great Pyramid, however, point to specific stars as they appeared in 2500 BC. Two distinct dates, two distinct alignments. This implies either that the pyramid complex was conceived and designed over an astonishing 8,000-year period, or, more plausibly, it was designed holistically to precisely encode two specific moments in time, a primordial beginning and a subsequent remembrance, a founding event and a later rebuilding. What momentous event occurred in 10,500 BC that was considered significant enough to be immortalized in the most colossal stone structures ever erected? What cataclysmic occurrence necessitated such desperate recording, so painstakingly carved into millions of tons of rock and meticulously aligned with the stars, to ensure that future generations would precisely know when it transpired? Catastrophe. The very kind of planetary catastrophe that obliterates entire civilizations and compels any survivors to initiate anew. The geological record unequivocally demonstrates such an event occurring on Earth during the Younger Dryas. The Martian surface, conversely, bears undeniable scars of a similar cataclysm when its atmosphere was violently stripped away. Two planets, two devastating disasters, and in both instances monumental structures unequivocally pointing to Orion, the constellation ancient peoples universally associated with both death and subsequent resurrection. You perish on one world, only to be reborn on another, leaving behind an indelible map so that those who follow will always know from whence you came and to where you ultimately departed. The Orion connection is not rooted in mere mythology. It is not about ancient peoples fabricating imaginative narratives to explain stars they supposedly did not comprehend. It is about a deliberate, calculated, and sophisticated effort to encode specific, vital information into structures designed to endure any conceivable catastrophe. Information concerning location, concerning time, concerning origins. The pyramids are not tombs. They are not temples. They are enduring markers. Signposts meticulously placed by a people who intimately understood the imperative to preserve their profound knowledge before everything they had constructed vanished, and they oriented those signposts toward Orion, because Orion represented home, or the pathway home, or the primordial place from which everyone ultimately originated, before Earth, before Mars, before humanity dispersed itself across the solar system and tragically forgot its true genesis. When you gaze upon Orion tonight, remember that every culture that has ever contemplated those three brilliant stars experienced something profound. A sense of recognition, a flicker of memory, the profound intuition that those stars signified something far deeper than mere distant suns in the vast void. Perhaps they were absolutely correct. The most ancient religious texts in human history are not the Bible, nor the Vedas, nor the Epic of Gilgamesh. They are the pyramid texts meticulously carved into the internal walls of the Pyramid of Unas at Saqqara, dating to approximately 2400 BC. These sacred inscriptions were never intended for human eyes. They were carved within sealed chambers, in perpetual darkness, meant exclusively for the soul of the departed pharaoh to decipher as he embarked upon his profound journey to the afterlife. And the content of these texts is truly astonishing. They do not describe the pharaoh's soul descending into a subterranean underworld beneath the earth. Instead, they recount his ascension flying, traversing the vast celestial expanse to reach the stars. Utterance 245 states it with remarkable clarity. The king appears as a star. He is the one who navigates the sky. He travels to the starry sky, to the place where the gods are, not where the gods metaphorically reside, but where the gods are physically present, within the stars. Utterance 267 elaborates further. The sky has strengthened for you the rays of the sun, so that you may lift yourself to heaven as the eye of Ra. Your bones are the gods and goddesses who are in the sky. The pharaoh does not merely become like the gods, he becomes the gods. His physical essence is transmuted into stellar material. He returns to the primordial place from which his very essence originated. This is not poetic metaphor. Ancient Egyptian was a precise, highly developed language, primarily employed for meticulous record-keeping and technical documentation. When the pyramid texts describe the pharaoh flying through the sky, they employ the identical grammatical constructions used to describe boats sailing upon the Nile, or laborers moving stone, denoting action, movement, tangible physical travel. The texts even describe a form of technology. The sky is given to you, the earth is given to you, this great one whom you have found on your way carries you. The ladder is bound together for you by Ra. A ladder to the sky. A mechanism. Something deliberately constructed that enables ascent from earth to the celestial realm. And what is the pharaoh's destination? You will reach the sky as Orion. Your soul will be as effective as Sotis. Orion and Sothis, the Egyptian name for Sirius, always those specific stars, always that precise destination. The deity Osiris was explicitly identified with Orion. His consort, Isis, was identified with Sirius. Their son Horus, with whom the living pharaoh was identified, represented the vital link between Earth and the stars. This was not a mythology concocted to explain natural phenomena. This was a detailed genealogy, a family history. The Egyptians were unequivocally informing anyone who could decipher their sacred texts that their rulers were direct descendants of beings who originated from Orion and Sirius. But this narrative extends even further back than the pyramid texts. Ancient Egyptian tradition, as recorded by the priest Manetho in the 3rd century BC, asserted that prior to the human dynasties ruling Egypt, the country was governed by actual gods, not god-kings, not humans claiming divine status, but bona fide deities who walked the earth and reigned for thousands of years. Manetho's comprehensive history divides Egyptian rulership into distinct epochs. First came the reign of the gods themselves, 7 great deities who held sway for an astonishing 12,300 years. Subsequently came the demigods, the progeny of gods and humans, who ruled for another millennium. Following them were the Shemsu-Hor, the followers of Horus, who governed for 13,420 years. Only after this vast span of time, according to Manetho, did human dynasties finally commence. Modern Egyptologists routinely dismiss this chronology as mythological inflation, equating it to ancient science fiction. Yet, Manetho was not simply fabricating fiction. He was the chief librarian at the renowned Library of Alexandria, with unparalleled access to invaluable documents and records that no longer exist. He meticulously based his history on sources that traced back to the very genesis of Egyptian civilization, and every extant Egyptian king list, whether the Turin Papyrus, the Palermo Stone, or the Abydos king list, makes direct reference to rulers who undeniably preceded the first human dynasty. The Turin Papyrus, one of the most complete king lists, contains a section that enumerates rulers categorized as venerables of Memphis and others simply designated spirits. Although the papyrus is damaged, the surviving portions clearly indicate reign lengths measured in hundreds of years. These were not symbolic reigns. The document functions as a precise chronological record, meticulously listing kings in sequential order with specific durations of rule. If we interpret these ancient texts at face value, Egyptian civilization does not merely extend back 4,500 years, but potentially over 36,000 years. 36 millennia of continuous culture, profound knowledge, and structured rulership. And, crucially, the earliest rulers were unequivocally non-human. The name Shemsu-Hor merits particular attention. Followers of Horus. Who exactly were they? Egyptian texts describe them as the wise ones, the builders, the keepers of knowledge. They possessed extraordinary abilities that later Egyptians could not replicate. They erected the primordial temples. They meticulously established the precise astronomical alignments. They instituted the enigmatic mystery schools, where the profoundest secrets of the universe were imparted. And then they vanished, not gradually but abruptly. The texts allude to a profound catastrophe, a great deluge, an epoch when the very sky descended to earth, and everything was utterly destroyed. Following this cataclysmic event, the Shemsu-Hor were gone, and human dynasties embarked upon the arduous process of attempting to preserve and re-establish what had been so tragically lost. This narrative strikingly aligns with the Younger Dryas boundary event, dated to 10,800 BC, a global catastrophe characterized by mass extinctions, rapid climate change, and the disappearance of numerous purportedly advanced cultures worldwide. It is precisely the date when Orion's belt achieved its perfect alignment with the Giza pyramids, the date when something fundamentally and irrevocably transformed in the course of human history. What if the Shemsu-Hor were not indigenous Egyptians? What if they were Martian refugees, the desperate survivors of their own planet's cataclysm, who arrived on Earth possessing advanced knowledge and valiantly attempted to reconstruct their civilization in a new world? The Egyptians designated them followers of Horus, but Horus himself was the god of the sky, the celestial ruler. Therefore, followers of the sky god implies beings who descended from the sky. Observe how the Egyptians consistently depicted their gods, humanoid figures characterized by elongated skulls, expansive eyes, and tall, slender physiques. Artists do not invent entirely from pure imagination. They draw inspiration from what they witness or what they have been credibly informed existed. For 3 millennia, Egyptian artists consistently portrayed their deities and early rulers with physical attributes that conspicuously diverge from typical human proportions. And then there are the elongated skulls discovered within Egyptian tombs. Not all Egyptians possessed them, only the royal families, only those who explicitly claimed direct lineal descent from the celestial gods. These skulls were not the product of artificial cranial deformation, the ancient practice of binding infant heads to alter their shape. They exhibit a greater cranial volume than typical human skulls. They possess distinct bone structures. They are physiologically distinct. Mainstream archaeology typically attributes these skulls to specific cultural practices or rare genetic anomalies. But what if they represent direct genetic heritage from an entirely different planet? What if the royal families meticulously preserved these distinct traits precisely because they signified legitimate descent from the original sky gods? Marry within the family, preserve the bloodline, maintain the sacred connection to Orion. The profound Egyptian obsession with resurrection assumes an even deeper resonance within this context. Osiris dies and is resurrected. The pharaoh dies and is resurrected among the stars. The entirety of their complex religious system revolves around death, not as a terminal ending, but as a transitional phase, a return to a primordial state, a celestial journey back to the stars where the soul unequivocally originated. The meticulous mummification process was not solely about preserving the physical body for an underworld journey. It was about preserving it for an interstellar journey. The internal organs were carefully removed and placed in canopic jars, each guarded by deities associated with specific stars. The body itself was oriented north-south, precisely aligned with the celestial axis. The tomb was elaborately provisioned with every conceivable item deemed essential for an arduous celestial voyage: food, specialized tools, effigies of servants in the form of Shakti figures, and ceremonial boats designed to navigate the cosmic waters. This was not merely symbolic. The Egyptians genuinely believed the pharaoh would physically require these items for a real journey to a real destination among the stars, and they held this belief because their ancestors had undertaken that very journey from Mars to Earth, from a dying world to a living one. The Book of the Dead, a later compendium of religious texts, contains a passage frequently overlooked by researchers. Spell 462 explicitly states, "I have come from the island of fire. Having filled my body with magic, I am like unto those who are in the island of fire." The island of fire, not a hellish realm, not a metaphor for spiritual purification, but an island that burns, a place of intense heat and conflagration. Mars, before its demise, would have been brilliantly visible from Earth as a luminous red point of light, a burning island suspended in the night sky, and the text affirms that the speaker originated from this island of fire, imbued with magic, which the Egyptians understood as advanced knowledge and sophisticated technology. There exists another text, less universally known but equally revealing, the Edfu building texts, meticulously carved into the walls of the Temple of Horus at Edfu. These inscriptions chronicle the creation of sacred spaces by enigmatic beings referred to as the builder gods and the seven sages. These beings, according to the texts, arrived in Egypt during the primordial early primeval age and established the very first temples on virgin ground, setting forth the sacred models that all subsequent temples would meticulously emulate. The texts depict these builder gods arriving from the homeland of the primeval ones, a place that was utterly destroyed by water. They arrived in ships. They brought with them profound knowledge of astronomy, advanced mathematics, and sacred architecture. They meticulously instructed the early Egyptians on how to precisely align structures with the stars, how to ingeniously encode knowledge within stone, how to create sacred spaces that inextricably linked Earth with the heavens. And then they departed, or perished, or ascended back to the stars. The texts are ambiguous regarding their exact departure, but they are unequivocally clear that the profound wisdom they imparted became the foundational bedrock of Egyptian civilization. Everything the pharaohs subsequently knew, everything the priests meticulously taught in the mystery schools, everything intricately encoded within the pyramids and temples, originated from these enigmatic beings who arrived from a destroyed homeland in the primeval age. A destroyed homeland. Mars, the ancestral home of the primeval ones who transported their knowledge to Earth, desperately attempting to preserve it through their religion, through their architecture, through texts carved into stone that they knew would outlast any conceivable catastrophe. The gods of Egypt were not figments of imagination. They were not superstitious anthropomorphizations of natural forces. They were memories, genetic memories, profound cultural memories passed down through millennia, becoming increasingly distorted with each successive generation, yet never entirely obliterated. The enduring memory that humanity originated from somewhere else, that the profound knowledge we possess was not independently developed here, but was meticulously brought here, that we are, in the most literal sense, children of the stars, and if one desires to return home, one must simply follow the map. One must erect pyramids precisely aligned with Orion. One must meticulously preserve the knowledge within texts and temples. One must patiently await the day when one's descendants develop the requisite technology to decipher the message and undertake the return journey. The Egyptians were not merely worshipping deities. They were diligently maintaining a vital connection to ancestors who had descended from the sky, and they were leaving behind explicit instructions for how to rediscover the path back. Dr. John Brandenburg possesses credentials that cannot be easily dismissed. A plasma physicist, a former consultant to NASA, a distinguished specialist in propulsion technologies and space exploration. He has authored peer-reviewed papers on advanced physics and actively participated in projects concerning the future of human spaceflight. This is not an individual prone to wild speculation or unfounded conspiracy theories, which renders his conclusions regarding Mars profoundly unsettling. Mars, according to Dr. Brandenburg's meticulous analysis of isotopic data gathered by multiple Mars missions, was destroyed by nuclear explosions. Not by natural disasters, not by asteroid impacts, but by nuclear weapons. The assertion may sound extraordinary, but before dismissing it outright, consider the substantial evidence he presents. The cells of NSD bissing of handles, the socket of Mirandris tusen bisschen adapted, anomalous concentrations of radioactive isotopes within the Martian atmosphere and surface soil. Specifically, xenon-12-9, a radioactive isotope that does not naturally occur in the specific concentrations observed on Mars. On Earth, xenon-12-9 is produced in significant quantities by only one process, nuclear fission. It serves as a definitive signature isotope of thermonuclear detonation. The concentration of xenon-12-9 in Mars's atmosphere is approximately 2.5 times higher than what could be reasonably expected from any natural processes. This discernible excess cannot be adequately explained by cosmic ray bombardment or the radioactive decay of primordial elements. The observed distribution pattern is inconsistent. The isotopic ratios are fundamentally incorrect. According to Brandenburg's intricate calculations, the only mechanism capable of producing this precise isotopic signature is a nuclear explosion, or more accurately, multiple nuclear explosions in the megaton range. But the evidence extends further. The distribution of uranium and thorium on the Martian surface exhibits anomalies that strikingly parallel what we observe at nuclear test sites on Earth. These radioactive elements are not homogeneously distributed across Mars. They cluster intensely in two specific regions, Cydonia Mensa and Galaxias Chaos. These are the identical regions where anomalous structures persistently appear in orbital imagery, the very same regions that some researchers identify as possible archaeological sites. Brandenburg's hypothesis posits that these locations were once population centers, cities, and they were deliberately targeted and utterly destroyed by nuclear weapons in an ancient planetary-scale war. The evidence, he argues, unequivocally points to a civilization that was sufficiently advanced to possess nuclear technology, and then, tragically, turned that technology against itself in a final catastrophic conflict. The mainstream scientific community largely rejects this theory. They contend that the observed isotopic signatures can be adequately explained by natural solar-wind interactions or by ancient volcanic activity. However, Brandenburg has meticulously countered every conventional explanation with empirical data that simply does not conform. Solar wind cannot produce the concentrated hotspots of radioactive material. Volcanic processes do not generate the specific isotopic ratios observed. The signatures, Brandenburg asserts, unequivocally match nuclear explosions. Period. Let us for a moment hypothesize that Brandenburg's theory regarding nuclear war is incorrect. That still leaves us confronting the monumental question, what ultimately killed Mars? Because something profoundly and irrevocably destroyed that planet's capacity to sustain life, and it transpired relatively swiftly in geological terms. Mars once possessed a global magnetic field, comparable in strength to Earth's. We know this from the magnetized rocks embedded within the Martian crust, fossilized evidence of ancient magnetic activity. A planetary magnetic field is generated by a rotating liquid iron core, creating a geodynamo effect. It is absolutely essential for complex life, as it deflects lethal solar wind and cosmic radiation that would otherwise strip away the atmosphere and sterilize the planetary surface. Approximately 3.7 billion years ago, Mars's magnetic field abruptly and completely ceased. The core stopped generating its crucial protective shield, and the planet was left utterly exposed to the full, devastating force of the Sun's particle stream. Over the subsequent several 100 million years, the atmosphere was progressively stripped away. Water evaporated into the vacuum of space. Surface temperatures plummeted catastrophically. Radiation levels became lethally high for any complex life. But here is the critical question. Why did the magnetic field abruptly stop? Planetary cores do not simply power down without cause. They are massive, planet-scale mechanisms driven by internal heat and rotational dynamics. For Mars's core to cease generating a magnetic field, something of immense scale would need to disrupt the internal dynamics of the entire planet. One plausible possibility is a truly colossal impact, an asteroid or comet large enough to shock the entire planetary structure, disrupting the core's rotation and shutting down the dynamo. The northern hemisphere of Mars exhibits compelling evidence of a gargantuan impact in its distant past. The Borealis Basin, encompassing 40% of the Martian surface, stands as the largest impact crater in the entire solar system. If an object of that colossal size struck Mars with sufficient force, it could plausibly have disrupted the core. However, there exists another more chilling possibility: internal detonation. If a civilization on Mars developed nuclear weapons and employed them not merely on the surface, but within deep underground facilities, perhaps attempting to harness geothermal energy or construct subterranean cities, could sustained nuclear detonations deep within the planet's crust have critically affected the magnetic field? Could they have quite literally bombed their own planet to death from the inside out? It sounds like the stuff of science fiction until one soberly considers what humanity has already wrought upon Earth. We have detonated over 2,000 nuclear weapons in tests alone. We have drilled boreholes miles deep into the planet's crust. We have extensively fracked and mined and extracted and injected materials into geological formations without fully comprehending the long-term consequences. We are a nascent civilization wielding inherently dangerous technology. Imagine the capabilities of a civilization 1,000,000 years older, and the catastrophic mistakes they might have inadvertently made. The timeline is crucial. If Mars lost its magnetic field 3.7 billion years ago, that event vastly predates any conceivable connection to Earth civilizations, which only emerged within the last 100,000 years or so. But what if the initial catastrophe was not merely the loss of the magnetic field? What if that was merely the beginning of the end? What if Mars's civilization endured underground for billions of years, gradually adapting to the slowly degrading surface conditions, until a final ultimate catastrophe rendered even subterranean survival impossible? There is compelling evidence of relatively recent water flow on Mars, not billions of years ago, but within the last few million years. Gullies observed on crater walls display clear signs of liquid water erosion that cannot be more than a few million years old. If liquid water was flowing that recently, conditions were still potentially habitable that recently, life could have persisted in protected environments far longer than the initial loss of the magnetic field would suggest. And if life persisted for that extended duration, intelligence could certainly have developed. Cities could have been constructed underground, within the vast networks of lava tubes we now know permeate the Martian subsurface. A civilization could have thrived beneath the surface while the exterior became progressively hostile. They would have witnessed their azure sky transmute to a pallid pink. They would have watched their oceans evaporate into the void. They would have observed their world slowly dying over eons. What actions would such a civilization undertake? They would undoubtedly cast their gaze outward, toward the sole other planet within their solar system that still possessed everything they had irrevocably lost: water, a thick atmosphere, magnetic protection, Earth. The ancient Egyptians meticulously recorded a catastrophic event in their king lists: the time before the gods, when chaos reigned supreme, and the world was utterly destroyed by water. The Sumerians documented a strikingly similar event in the Epic of Atrahasis, describing powerful gods who descended to Earth to mine gold and subsequently created humanity to serve as their workforce. The Hindu Vedas recount celestial wars between gods, fought with weapons that bear a remarkable resemblance to nuclear devices. Descriptions of blinding flashes, mushroom clouds, cities incinerated and turned to glass, debilitating radiation sickness. Every ancient culture possesses a flood myth, a narrative of a catastrophe descending from the sky, an epoch when the world teetered on the brink of annihilation, and only a handful of survivors remained to re-establish civilization. What if these are not merely metaphorical stories, but rather precise historical records, meticulously preserved through millennia of oral tradition? What if they describe the dramatic arrival of refugees from a dying planet, bearing with them the haunting memory of a nuclear catastrophe that had utterly destroyed their world? The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes that around 10,1800 BC, multiple comet fragments catastrophically struck Earth, igniting global wildfires, triggering profound climate disruption, and causing the widespread extinction of megafauna. The scientific evidence supporting this impact, while still debated, is steadily accumulating. Nanodiamonds, magnetic spherules, and iridium anomalies, all definitive markers of extraterrestrial impact, appear consistently in sediment layers, precisely dated to this specific period. But what if it wasn't merely a comet? What if it was spacecraft? Multiple vessels entering Earth's atmosphere, burning up, crashing, their desperate survivors struggling to reach the surface of an alien world that represented their last, desperate hope for continuation. The resulting debris field would appear identical to a comet impact. The global fires would precisely match the atmospheric entry of massive objects at terminal velocity. The survivors would emerge into a world already reeling from catastrophe, and they would be compelled to rebuild from an almost unfathomable 0 point. They would bring with them whatever they could salvage: profound knowledge, advanced mathematics, sophisticated astronomy, precise architectural techniques, vital genetic material, seeds of crops that did not originate on Earth. Technologies that would undoubtedly seem like sheer magic to the primitive humans already inhabiting the planet. And they would inevitably require these existing humans to assist in rebuilding, to serve as a workforce, to interbreed with, to adapt their biology to Earth's unique environment, which precisely mirrors the accounts found in Sumerian texts. The Anunnaki descending to Earth, genetically engineering humans by manipulating their own DNA with primitive hominids, thereby creating a worker species intelligent enough to follow instructions, yet obedient enough to serve, and eventually departing or dying out, leaving their hybrid descendants to perpetuate their legacy. Mars did not perish as an empty world. It died while a civilization was still fiercely fighting for its survival. And when it became unequivocally clear that survival on Mars was no longer possible, they launched one final desperate exodus. Every ship they could construct, every individual who could be saved. A perilous, desperate journey across millions of miles of unforgiving space to the sole other habitable world within their solar system. Some ships undoubtedly succeeded, others tragically did not. Those that crashed or disintegrated in Earth's atmosphere would have left the debris signatures we now erroneously attribute to comets. Those that successfully landed would disembark refugees who had just witnessed the complete annihilation of their entire world. They would be traumatized, scattered, desperately striving to preserve their invaluable knowledge while simultaneously adapting to a planet with higher gravity, a different atmospheric composition, and unfamiliar pathogens. They would construct monumental structures, pyramids pointing back to Orion, the constellation visible from both Mars and Earth, a silent, enduring marker proclaiming, "This is where we came from. Remember us. Remember home." They would meticulously encode their profound knowledge in stone, because they had just endured the harshest lesson any civilization can ever learn. Everything else is ephemeral. Libraries burn, digital media degrades, even collective memory fades across generations. Only stone endures. The Great Pyramid is not a tomb. It is a monument to an unfathomable catastrophe, a solemn memorial to a dead world, a desperate endeavor by survivors to ensure their profound story would not be entirely erased from existence. They could not salvage Mars, but they could meticulously preserve the memory of Mars. They could leave an indelible message for their descendants, intricately encoded in mathematics, in astronomy, and in architecture, patiently awaiting the day when humanity would advance sufficiently to decipher it. And what does that message convey? We originated from the stars. We accomplished magnificent feats. We ultimately destroyed ourselves. Learn from our catastrophic errors. Do not allow it to transpire again. Mars serves as a profound warning. Every desiccated ocean, every stripped atmosphere, every silent ruin meticulously photographed by our rovers, all vividly illustrate the consequences when a civilization catastrophically fails to responsibly manage its technology, its environment, and its own innate destructive proclivities. It is revealing our potential future, should we fail to internalize the critical lessons intricately encoded within those ancient pyramids. The Martians did not simply vanish. They are here. We are them. Their genetic code diluted across 100,000 years of interbreeding. Their knowledge fragmented and distorted into mythological narratives. Their monumental structures still standing, still patiently awaiting the moment to impart their story to anyone possessing the wisdom to truly listen. Mars perished so that Earth might live, and the pyramids are the enduring tombstone for an entire world. Dr. Ellis Silver, an ecologist who has dedicated years to studying human biology from an evolutionary perspective, observed something profoundly peculiar, an anomaly that continued to trouble him the more deeply he examined the evidence. Humans do not quite seamlessly fit on Earth. Not in the same harmonious manner as every other indigenous species. While we are certainly adapted to this planet and capable of survival here, there are distinct anomalies within our biology that strongly suggest we evolved elsewhere and were subsequently transplanted here relatively recently in evolutionary terms. Begin with the most evident problem: chronic back pain. Humans suffer from debilitating back problems at rates unparalleled by any other animal. Our spines are curved in a specific way that subjects the lower vertebrae to constant, immense stress. We are the sole species that routinely necessitates medical intervention merely to manage the pain associated with upright bipedalism. Why would the intricate process of evolution produce such a fundamentally flawed design? Dr. Silver's compelling hypothesis posits that our spines evolved in a lower gravity environment on a planet with a significantly weaker gravitational pull. In such an environment, our specific spinal structure would function perfectly. The curvature would provide optimal flexibility without the incessant compression we endure on Earth. Mars possesses approximately 38% of Earth's gravity. A human body specifically designed for Martian gravity would experience precisely the type of spinal stress we observe when transplanted to Earth's considerably stronger gravitational field. Then there is the unique peril of human childbirth. Human parturition is exceptionally dangerous compared to that of other mammals. The infant's head is almost disproportionately large to pass safely through the maternal birth canal. Prior to the advent of modern medicine, maternal mortality rates were staggeringly high. Women routinely succumbed to complications during childbirth, complications that simply do not occur in other species. Why would evolution craft a reproductive system so poorly matched between fetal head size and pelvic opening? Again, a lower gravity environment offers a plausible solution. In reduced gravity, a larger cranium relative to overall body size would present significantly fewer mechanical challenges during birth. The fundamental physics of the birth process would be entirely different. Women giving birth in Martian gravity would encounter far fewer complications than women giving birth in Earth's more intense gravitational field. We are in essence observing our biology struggling against a gravitational environment for which it was not originally designed. Human skin is remarkably vulnerable to solar exposure. We burn with ease. We develop skin cancer at alarmingly high rates. We are compelled to seek shelter or don protective clothing for any extended outdoor activity. No other mammal confronts this specific problem. Animals endowed with fur, scales, or thick hides can comfortably spend their entire lives in direct sunlight without adverse effects. Even other primates possess superior solar protection compared to humans. Why are we so profoundly ill-adapted to the very star that provides our planet's energy? If humans evolved on a planet with a substantially thicker atmosphere, one that effectively filtered a greater proportion of ultraviolet radiation, our intrinsic lack of solar protection becomes entirely comprehensible. Mars, in its ancient habitable epoch, once possessed a far denser atmosphere than it does today. During that period, the atmospheric density would have provided significantly enhanced UV protection compared to Earth's comparatively thinner atmosphere. Humans adapted to the sunlight of ancient Mars would undoubtedly perceive Earth's more intense solar radiation as harsh and damaging, which is precisely what we experience. Consider our fundamental circadian rhythm, the internal biological clock that meticulously regulates our sleep and wake cycles. The natural human circadian rhythm inherently runs slightly longer than 24 hours. When completely isolated from external time cues, humans consistently tend to drift toward a 24-9-hour cycle. This phenomenon has been repeatedly demonstrated in numerous studies where subjects reside in environments devoid of clocks, natural sunlight, or any other temporal indicators. Their intrinsic rhythm consistently settles at just under 25 hours. Earth's day spans 24 hours. Mars's day, remarkably, is 24.6 hours. Our internal biological clock is not synchronized with Earth's rotation. It is, with astonishing precision, synchronized with Mars's rotation. We exist on a planet where every single day, our internal biology is subtly misaligned with its ambient environment. We relentlessly struggle against this biological imperative, necessitating alarm clocks, caffeine, and artificial lighting to forcibly conform ourselves to Earth's 24-hour cycle. If we indeed evolved on Mars, our circadian rhythm would be perfectly adapted. We would awaken and slumber in complete natural harmony with the planet's rotation. The undeniable fact that our internal biology does not align with Earth's day length serves as compelling biological evidence that we originated from somewhere else. Then there is the perplexing mystery of human disease susceptibility. We succumb to illness with striking frequency. Colds, influenza, infections, inflammatory conditions, debilitating autoimmune disorders. Our immune systems often appear hyperactive, aggressively attacking harmless substances, while inexplicably failing to detect genuine threats. We exhibit allergies to numerous plants and animals that are demonstrably native to Earth. Our bodies perceive pollen, a benign natural substance, as a deadly invader. Why? Possibly because our immune systems evolved in an entirely different pathogenic environment, designed to combat microorganisms from a different planet. When transplanted to Earth's distinct biosphere, our immune systems encountered an entirely novel catalogue of microorganisms, allergens, and complex biological compounds. We are perhaps still in a perpetual state of adaptation, still laboring to distinguish Earth's benign substances from actual threats. Our prevalent allergies and autoimmune conditions could very well be the profound consequence of an immune system that developed in a Martian environment suddenly being exposed to an Earth environment for which it was inherently unprepared. There is also the profound question of our very genetic code. Human DNA comprises approximately 3 billion base pairs. Of these, only a minuscule 2% actually codes for proteins. The remaining 98% is frequently and erroneously termed junk DNA, non-coding regions that ostensibly serve no discernible function. Yet, with increasing frequency, scientists are discovering that much of this so-called junk DNA is anything but junk. It contains intricate regulatory elements, crucial structural information, and enigmatic sequences whose precise purpose we do not yet comprehend. Some of these non-coding regions exhibit clear indications of being incredibly ancient, older than humanity, older than primates, potentially even older than life as we understand it on Earth. There are specific sequences that appear within human DNA that conspicuously do not align with the evolutionary timeline suggested by the fossil record. It is as if substantial portions of our genome were inserted from an external source, rather than evolving gradually through the painstaking process of natural selection. The theory of panspermia, famously proposed by scientists including Francis Crick, the co-discoverer of DNA structure, posits that life on Earth was initially seeded from space. Microorganisms, resilient spores, or even fundamental genetic material purportedly arrived on comets or asteroids, thereby jump-starting biological evolution here. But what if this seeding was not a random occurrence? What if it was a deliberate, calculated act? What if a dying Martian civilization intentionally seeded Earth with their genetic material, ensuring that even if they themselves did not physically survive, their unique biology would continue to flourish on another world? In 1996, NASA announced the momentous discovery of ALH 84C-1, a meteorite unequivocally originating from Mars that landed in Antarctica approximately 13,000 years ago. Within this ancient rock, scientists identified microscopic structures that bore an uncanny resemblance to fossilized bacteria, minute tubular formations strikingly similar to microbial life. The announcement was explosive, representing potential empirical evidence of life on Mars. The scientific community immediately attacked the findings, arguing that the structures were too small, that they could be purely mineral formations rather than biological, and that the evidence was ultimately inconclusive. However, subsequent, more advanced analysis, employing sophisticated technology, has revealed further corroborating features that are exceedingly difficult to explain through purely geological processes. The meteorite contains complex organic compounds. It contains magnetic crystals of a specific type exclusively produced by bacteria on Earth. It exhibits structural features that precisely parallel known bacterial fossils. If that meteorite indeed contains fossilized Martian bacteria, it conclusively proves that life existed on Mars. And if resilient Martian bacteria can survive the arduous journey from Mars to Earth, safely encapsulated within a rock traversing space for millions of years, then why not more complex genetic material? Why not spores, viruses, or even intricately engineered biological packages specifically designed to endure interplanetary travel? We know unequivocally that Earth has been bombarded by Martian meteorites throughout its geological history. Hundreds have been definitively identified. Thousands more likely exist, yet undiscovered. Each one represents a potential vector for biological transfer from Mars to Earth. If even a single one of those rocks carried viable genetic material, it could have profoundly influenced the trajectory of life's development on this planet. But the most compelling evidence resides within our own consciousness. Humans have perpetually harbored a profound sense of displacement on Earth. Every culture, every religion, every philosophical tradition describes an intrinsic sense of alienation, a pervasive feeling that we do not truly belong here. We gaze at the stars and experience an inexplicable longing. We define death as going home. We construct colossal monuments that unequivocally point toward the heavens. We dream incessantly of space travel, of reaching other worlds, of finally discovering the place where we genuinely fit. This is not normative animal behavior. Other species do not contemplate the stars and ponder what lies beyond. They do not experience existential loneliness or question their fundamental purpose. They do not create elaborate mythologies about gods descending from the sky. This profound behavior is uniquely human, and it assumes perfect logical sense if we are indeed a transplanted species, carrying a deeply embedded genetic memory of a home we tragically lost. A world we can no longer physically return to, but can never quite entirely forget. There exists a concept in psychology known as genetic memory, the provocative idea that experiences can be encoded directly into DNA and subsequently passed down to descendants. While still controversial, studies on trauma inheritance increasingly suggest that significant, impactful experiences can indeed induce epigenetic changes that profoundly affect subsequent generations. If this theory holds true, then the unimaginable trauma of losing an entire planet, of fleeing through the vacuum of space, of crash landing on an alien world, would be indelibly encoded within the DNA of every survivor. That profound trauma would then be transmitted to their progeny, and their progeny's progeny, gradually diluting over vast stretches of time, yet never completely vanishing. What we colloquially refer to as the human condition, the pervasive sense of not belonging, the haunting feeling that something vital is perpetually missing, the inexplicable longing for something we cannot quite articulate, might in fact be genetic memory, the faint echo of an ancient catastrophe, indelibly imprinted within our very DNA. We feel alien on Earth because, fundamentally, we are aliens on Earth. Refugees who tragically forgot they were refugees. Survivors of a cataclysm so absolute that we lost even the fundamental memory of what we survived. Our biology articulates the story that our history has tragically forgotten. Lower gravity adaptation, heightened solar sensitivity, circadian misalignment, persistent genetic anomalies. We are in essence Martians who have spent thousands of generations meticulously adapting to Earth, slowly undergoing biological transmutation to conform to this alien environment, yet still bearing the unmistakable markers of our true origin. And if this profound hypothesis holds true, then the pyramids are far more than mere monuments. They are profound genealogical records, enduring markers proclaiming, "This is the world from which your ancestors originated," precise maps pointing toward a primordial home world we can barely recall. Technology intrinsically encoded in stone, patiently awaiting our advancement to a point where we can finally recognize its true purpose. We are not merely searching for alien life on Mars. We are, in a profound sense, searching for tangible evidence of our own distant ancestors. And every rover, every orbiter, every mission that gently touches Martian soil is an attempt, whether consciously recognized or not, to find our way back home. The Sumerians materialized seemingly out of nowhere around 4000 BC in Mesopotamia, already possessing a fully developed complex civilization. There was no gradual progression from primitive villages to burgeoning cities, no archaeological evidence of slow, incremental cultural evolution. They simply arrived, equipped with writing, sophisticated mathematics, advanced astronomy, comprehensive legal systems, complex architecture, and agricultural techniques that would remain unsurpassed for millennia. Their own historical records unequivocally state they were instructed by the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the sky. Not metaphorical gods, but tangible physical beings who arrived from the heavens, walked among humanity, and imparted knowledge that transformed scattered nomadic tribes into the very first urban civilization on Earth. The Sumerian king list, much like the Egyptian records, enumerates rulers who reigned for impossibly long durations before a great deluge utterly destroyed the world and necessitated the complete re-establishment of civilization. But here is the critical relevance for our investigation. The Sumerians constructed ziggurats, colossal stepped pyramids that majestically dominated their cities. These structures were not tombs. They were designated as temples, yet their precise actual function remains largely obscure. Each ziggurat featured a flat platform at its summit, accessible solely by long ascending staircases, where priests performed arcane rituals never witnessed by the general populace. The design of these ziggurats is strikingly identical to structures observed on Mars. Satellite imagery of the Elysium region unmistakably reveals stepped pyramids with flat summit platforms. The fundamental architectural principles are precisely the same. Build high, create multiple levels, and establish a profound connection between the terrestrial ground and the celestial sky. The ziggurats were not inspired by terrestrial mountains, as mainstream archaeology contends. They were, in essence, meticulous copies of Martian architecture, erected by people who distinctly remembered, or were instructed by those who remembered, the architectural aesthetic of their home world. The Sumerian creation myth describes the Anunnaki's arrival on Earth with the explicit purpose of mining gold. They then genetically engineered humans by meticulously blending their own DNA with that of primitive hominids, thereby creating a subservient worker species intelligent enough to execute complex instructions, yet sufficiently obedient to serve. This narrative has been largely dismissed as mere mythology, yet it describes genetic engineering with an uncomfortable degree of specificity, the mixing of bloodlines, the creation of hybrids. The ultimate result, according to this narrative, being modern humans who diverge from other primates in ways that conventional evolution cannot fully elucidate. The emphasis on gold is intriguing. Why would highly advanced beings undertake an arduous interstellar journey solely for gold? The metal possesses limited practical utility in primitive technology. However, gold is an exceptional electrical conductor, remarkably resistant to corrosion, invaluable in advanced electronics, and, according to some provocative theories, crucial for radiation shielding. A civilization desperately attempting to repair its planet's severely degraded atmosphere might necessitate massive quantities of gold for orbital reflectors or sophisticated atmospheric processing. Such extensive mining operations would undeniably demand a substantial workforce. Creating that workforce through genetic engineering would be a far more expeditious solution than patiently awaiting the natural evolution of local intelligence. The Sumerians also bequeathed to us the 7-day week, a temporal division not based on lunar cycles, nor on solar years. 7 days meticulously corresponding to the 7 celestial bodies visible to the unaided eye: Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn. Mars held a singularly special significance within their cosmology. They named it the Red Star, associating it with war and profound catastrophe, the planet that brought both destruction and subsequent transformation. Did they retain a collective memory of Mars as the world that consumed itself, thereby sending its desperate refugees to Earth? Was their persistent association of Mars with conflict a deep cultural memory of the nuclear catastrophe that utterly annihilated that planet? The mythological connection between Mars and strife pervades cultures globally, strongly suggesting a common ancient origin for this powerful association. Now shift our focus to South America. The Nazca lines in Peru are colossal geoglyphs meticulously carved into the desert floor, discernible only from an aerial vantage point. Hundreds of figures, some extending over 600 feet across, animals, intricate geometric patterns, and remarkably straight lines that traverse miles of valleys and mountains without any deviation whatsoever. Created by the Nazca culture between 400 BC and 600 AD, they are conventionally explained as religious offerings intended for sky gods. However, religious offerings do not intrinsically require aerial visibility. Humans on the ground are utterly incapable of perceiving these immense figures. They are unequivocally designed for aerial viewing, for someone observing from above, from aircraft or from spacecraft. Are they perhaps ancient messages, archaic landing instructions, or sophisticated navigational markers for craft that regularly traversed these routes before their ultimate departure or destruction? The Nazca also constructed pyramids, step pyramids featuring flat summit platforms, the identical design observed in Sumerian ziggurats and the Martian structures. This precise architectural pattern replicates itself across every ancient civilization: Egypt, Mesopotamia, Central America, Southeast Asia, all constructing pyramids with remarkably similar proportions, all associating these structures with divine beings from the sky, and all unequivocally claiming their profound knowledge originated from beings who descended from the heavens. In Bolivia, we find Pumapunku, an integral part of the Tiwanaku complex. This site contains megalithic stone blocks cut with a precision that modern engineers openly admit they struggle to explain. Perfectly flat surfaces spanning several feet, precise 90-degree angles meticulously carved into diorite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, and intricate interlocking cuts that fit together like sophisticated puzzles. There are no discernible tool marks, no evidence whatsoever of the crude copper and stone implements that are supposedly responsible for these incredibly precise cuts. The blocks at Pumapunku appear machine-made, laser-cut, processed in ways that should be utterly impossible for a culture that had not yet discovered iron. Some of these colossal blocks weigh over 100 tons and were transported from quarries miles away, across challenging mountainous terrain. The site itself is situated at 13,000 feet above sea level, where the thin air exponentially exacerbates the difficulty of any physical labor. Mainstream archaeology typically dates Pumapunku to approximately 600 AD, yet the site exhibits compelling evidence of a much greater antiquity. Extensive water erosion, severe seismic damage from earthquakes that geological records suggest occurred thousands of years earlier than the conventional dating. Some researchers persuasively argue that Pumapunku is a remnant of a pre-Diluvian civilization, constructed using technology that was tragically lost when a catastrophic event annihilated its original builders. The architectural style of Pumapunku is utterly unique, matching nothing else in the region. It appears fully developed, with no primitive precursors, as if its builders arrived with complete pre-existing knowledge and simply implemented it without the trial and error process that characterizes typical technological development. Just like the Sumerians, just like the Egyptians, advanced knowledge suddenly appearing in populations that exhibit no gradual progression toward such sophistication. Now journey forward in time to Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Excavated commencing in 1995, this revolutionary site completely rewrote everything archaeologists had previously conceived about the development of civilization. Massive stone circles, featuring intricately carved pillars, weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in complex patterns and adorned with sophisticated reliefs of animals and enigmatic abstract symbols. The dating is what renders Göbekli Tepe truly revolutionary. 11,600 years old. 11,600 years old. That places its construction at approximately 9600 BC, firmly within the pre-agricultural period. This monumental site was erected by hunter-gatherers, by people who, by conventional understanding, had not yet developed farming, had not domesticated animals, had not established permanent settlements. And yet they quarried and transported 20-ton stones, carved intricate designs, and constructed astronomically aligned structures that unequivocally demanded sophisticated engineering knowledge. Göbekli Tepe predates the pyramids of Egypt by a staggering 6,000 years. It predates Stonehenge by an equal 6,000 years. It predates the invention of writing, the wheel and pottery. It should not exist, yet it undeniably does, and its existence strongly suggests that advanced knowledge was present on Earth far earlier than conventional history permits. The precise date is significant for another crucial reason. Göbekli Tepe was constructed just after the Younger Dryas event, just after the global catastrophe that definitively marks the termination of the last ice age, just after the period when, according to our hypothesis, Martian refugees would have arrived on Earth, desperately fleeing their dying planet. These survivors would have landed in a world utterly devastated by comet impacts and profound climate upheaval. They would have needed to establish themselves swiftly. They would have needed monuments, markers, sacred gathering places to preserve their invaluable knowledge before it was irretrievably lost. Göbekli Tepe could represent one of the very first sites constructed by these refugees. A congregating point, a sacred temple, a school where they instructed the local populations who had also endured Earth's own catastrophe. And once their vital purpose was fulfilled, they intentionally buried it, deliberately filling in the excavations and covering the entire site, meticulously preserving it for future generations to rediscover. Why bury it? Perhaps because the knowledge itself was too perilous. Perhaps because the indigenous locals were simply not yet prepared for its revelations. Or perhaps because the survivors themselves were slowly perishing, unable to fully adapt to Earth's dramatically different environment, and they desired to ensure their profound message would endure, even if they personally did not. Bury the truth. Allow immense time to elapse. Patiently await humanity's development to a point where they are sufficiently advanced to comprehend what they are being shown. Every ancient culture recounts the same fundamental story, albeit with different names. Beings from the sky who imparted to humanity the fundamental tenets of agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, and architecture. Beings who sojourned for a time and then departed, ascending back to the heavens from which they originated. The Egyptians referred to them as the Shemsu-Hor. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. The Mesoamericans knew them as Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl. The Hindus called them the Devas. The Chinese spoke of the Yellow Emperor and his celestial court. Different names, yet the identical narrative: advanced beings from an external origin who civilized humanity and then left, often promising a future return. Every single culture constructed pyramids to commemorate these beings. Every culture meticulously aligned those pyramids with specific stars. Every culture meticulously preserved myths chronicling catastrophe, worlds destroyed, and gods who fled dying realms to seed new ones. This is not coincidence. This is not independent cultural development producing eerily similar myths through universal psychological archetypes. This is memory fragmented, distorted by thousands of years of oral transmission, but memory nonetheless. Memory of Mars. Memory of the cataclysm. Memory of the Exodus and the ultimate arrival on Earth. The cargo cults of the Pacific Islands offer a compelling modern parallel. During World War II, Allied forces established military bases on remote islands, introducing unprecedented supplies and advanced technology to islanders who had never witnessed such marvels. When the war concluded and the bases were subsequently abandoned, the islanders meticulously constructed replica airplanes from wood and straw. They painstakingly carved rudimentary runways into the dense jungle. They performed intricate rituals, faithfully imitating the soldiers, fervently hoping to summon the divine beings who had once brought such immense wealth and then departed. Ancient humans, similarly, engaged in analogous behavior. They constructed pyramids, painstakingly imitating the grand structures that the sky gods had revealed to them. They aligned these colossal monuments with the stars, meticulously copying the astronomical knowledge they had been explicitly taught. They performed elaborate rituals, desperately hoping for the return of their gods. Generation after generation, these rituals persisted, even as their original profound meaning gradually eroded and was forgotten. The pyramids remained. The precise astronomical alignments remained. The memory, intricately buried in enduring stone and pervasive story, persisted. We are not observing a collection of separate civilizations developing independently. We are observing a singular common source of profound knowledge, disseminated across the globe by survivors who dispersed from impact sites. They instructed local populations, erected monumental structures, and valiantly attempted to preserve what they had salvaged from their dying world before they themselves gradually disappeared into the vast genetic pool of humanity. The memory of Mars endures within every pyramid, every ziggurat, every stone circle precisely aligned to the stars. And if we are willing to perceive the overarching pattern, the profound message becomes startlingly clear. We originated from there. We fled a cataclysm. We are the descendants of two worlds, and the monumental structures we inherited are in essence maps, pointing us back to the fundamental truth we tragically forgot. In 2001, a Scottish systems administrator named Gary McKinnon undertook an action that would forever alter the trajectory of his life. He hacked into NASA computers. Not for financial gain, not for espionage, but in a fervent quest for evidence of UFOs and suppressed technology. What he ultimately uncovered proved far more compelling than his initial search. McKinnon gained unauthorized access to 97 military and NASA computers over a period of 13 months. He was not a sophisticated hacker, employing readily available software to exploit default passwords and lax security protocols. The sheer ease of access itself was astonishing, suggesting these networks were either complacent about intrusion or deliberately unconcerned with safeguarding certain categories of information. While meticulously sifting through directories, McKinnon stumbled upon a folder prominently labeled non-terrestrial officers. Non-terrestrial officers. Not astronauts, not personnel stationed on conventional spacecraft, but officers operating outside of terrestrial jurisdiction. The folder contained meticulous lists of names and ranks, records of ship-to-ship transfers, and assignments that made no conceivable sense within the context of NASA's publicly acknowledged programs. McKinnon also discovered images, high-resolution photographs of anomalous structures on the far side of the Moon and orbital objects that appeared unequivocally artificial. Before his connection was traced and summarily terminated, the United States government responded with unprecedented aggression. They charged McKinnon with the most extensive military computer hack in history, initiating extradition proceedings from the UK to face trial in America, with a potential sentence of 70 years in federal prison for a non-violent intrusion that caused no physical damage and stole no classified weapons data. This response was grossly disproportionate, unless what McKinnon had seen was so extraordinarily sensitive that making an extreme example of him became an urgent matter of national security. McKinnon has steadfastly maintained his narrative for over 20 years, despite the immense legal nightmare it precipitated. He claims to have witnessed evidence of a secret space program. He claims to have seen personnel assignments that strongly implied off-world operations. He claims to have viewed structures on celestial bodies that possess no official explanation. And NASA's response was not to clarify what he had observed. It was to relentlessly pursue his legal destruction, thereby ensuring that no one else would dare to look. But NASA's institutional relationship with secrecy extends much further back than Gary McKinnon. In 1960, even before the first American ventured into space, NASA commissioned a groundbreaking study known as the Brookings Report, officially titled Proposed Studies on the Implications of Peaceful Space Activities for Human Affairs. This comprehensive document meticulously examined the potential ramifications should space exploration unearth definitive evidence of extraterrestrial life or artifacts. The report's ultimate conclusion was chilling. It unequivocally recommended that evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence should be deliberately withheld from the public. The stated reasoning was that such a monumental discovery would inevitably destabilize human society, fundamentally undermine established religious institutions, and induce profound psychological trauma in populations utterly unprepared for the revelation that we are not in fact alone. The report explicitly highlighted the inherent danger of discovering artifacts on the Moon or Mars, strongly suggesting that such findings would fundamentally challenge human self-perception to its very core. This was not some fringe conspiracy document. This was an official NASA-commissioned study that subsequently became policy guidance for how space agencies should manage revolutionary discoveries. And the overarching policy it emphatically recommended was suppression. Classify the data. Control the narrative. Release only what the public can handle. If you discover ancient ruins on Mars, do not inform anyone. With that critical context, observe NASA's historical behavior concerning Martian imagery. When the Viking 1 orbiter photographed the face on Mars in 1976, NASA initially released the image accompanied by a caption describing it as an interesting rock formation. However, the public reaction was immediate, widespread and intense. People unequivocally perceived what appeared to be a face, and they vehemently demanded answers. NASA's official response was swift dismissal. Tricks of light and shadow. Pareidolia. Nothing to see here. Yet they conspicuously avoided dispatching another mission to photograph Cydonia at close range until 1998, an astonishing 22 years later, when the Mars Global Surveyor finally acquired higher-resolution images of the region. Those new images showed the face under different lighting conditions, and NASA promptly declared the case closed. Just a mesa, a natural formation. Skeptics were largely appeased. The story faded from public discourse, except that independent researchers who meticulously analyzed the higher-resolution images discovered that while the face itself appeared less dramatic under varied lighting, the geometric structures consistently surrounding it remained distinctly visible. The pyramids, the alignments, the complex mathematical relationships. NASA released images of the face, but meticulously avoided detailed photographic coverage of the broader Cydonia complex. They provided an answer to the specific question everyone was vociferously asking, while deftly sidestepping the far more profound questions they fervently hoped no one would pose. This pattern of selective disclosure and controlled information repeats consistently throughout NASA's Mars missions. Images are released to the public after extensive processing, not as raw data immediately upon acquisition. Processed data implies data that has been thoroughly examined, potentially altered, and ultimately approved for release. Researchers seeking access to raw image data must submit formal requests and endure lengthy waits for approval. By the time independent analysts gain access, NASA has already had weeks or months to identify anything potentially problematic and meticulously prepare preemptive explanations. There are documented instances of images being altered prior to public release. Researchers who meticulously compare raw data files with publicly released versions have identified clear discrepancies. Objects unequivocally present in raw images have mysteriously vanished in processed versions. Blurred areas exist where raw images clearly display intricate detail. Color corrections have demonstrably altered the appearance of specific structures. NASA attributes these discrepancies to standard processing procedures, removing artifacts, correcting for sensor anomalies. But the undeniable effect is that the public never sees precisely what the cameras actually captured. They see only what NASA chooses to show them. Whistleblowers from within the space agency have emerged over the years, though rarely armed with evidence substantial enough to definitively overcome institutional denial. Dana Hare, who worked as a photographic technician for NASA contractors during the Apollo program, publicly testified that she personally witnessed images being airbrushed prior to release. Objects observed in photographs of the moon were systematically removed or obscured, and she was explicitly informed this was standard procedure for anything that could not be explained. Ken Johnston, who served as a contractor during the Apollo missions, responsible for managing photographs, claimed he was explicitly ordered to destroy Apollo images that depicted artificial structures on the moon. He defiantly refused and meticulously kept copies, which he later attempted to release publicly. NASA vehemently discredited him, asserting he was never in a position to possess access to classified materials, and summarily dismissed his allegations. However, Johnston provided comprehensive documentation of his employment and security clearances that directly contradicted NASA's denials. The implicit message is starkly clear. If you speak about what you witnessed, we will thoroughly destroy your credibility to such an extent that no one will ever believe you. Why such pervasive secrecy if there is genuinely nothing to hide? NASA operates on substantial public funding. Its core mission is exploration and the advancement of human knowledge. If they indeed discovered something truly revolutionary, something that would fundamentally transform our understanding of human origins, why would they actively suppress it? The Brookings Report offers one compelling answer: social stability, potential religious implications, profound economic disruption. The revelation that humanity originated on Mars, that we are the direct descendants of refugees from a dead planet, would undeniably shatter foundational beliefs. But there is another, perhaps more cynical possibility: control. If NASA, or more accurately, the military and intelligence apparatus that funds and directs a significant portion of NASA's classified operations, possesses precise knowledge about Martian artifacts and comprehends their profound implications, that knowledge instantly becomes immense power. Technology recovered from Martian sites could yield revolutionary advancements in energy, propulsion, material science. Whoever controls that technology would undeniably control the future. If you are NASA, or the clandestine agencies pulling its strings, would you openly share world-altering technology, or would you classify it, meticulously study it in secret, and relentlessly maintain the strategic advantage it provides? The critical question of whether humans have returned to Mars since the Viking missions warrants serious examination. Official records unequivocally state no. No human has ventured beyond low Earth orbit since Apollo 17 in 1972. Yet, the requisite technology to send humans to Mars has demonstrably existed since the 1980s. Nuclear thermal propulsion, a technology capable of reducing Mars transit time to mere months instead of years, was successfully tested in the 1970s and then promptly classified. Budgets for black programs, clandestine military projects hidden from public oversight, run into tens of billions annually, with absolutely no public accounting of how that immense money is expended. Could a secret Mars program exist? Could humans have already landed on Mars, extensively explored the Cydonia complex, and recovered artifacts, all without public knowledge? The infrastructure demonstrably exists. The technology exists. The motivation exists. What conspicuously does not exist is transparency. Elon Musk's pervasive obsession with Mars is particularly interesting within this context. He has staked his entire reputation and immense fortune on the ambitious goal of transforming humanity into a multi-planetary species, with Mars as the primary target. SpaceX has successfully developed reusable rockets, dramatically reducing launch costs by orders of magnitude. Musk speaks about Mars colonization not as a distant, utopian dream, but as an urgent, immediate necessity. He has repeatedly asserted that humanity must become multiplanetary to ensure its long-term survival. His timelines are aggressively ambitious. His commitment is absolute. His behavior consistently suggests an underlying urgency, as if a critical deadline looms, a compelling reason why humanity needs to reach Mars sooner rather than later. Or perhaps he has simply meticulously examined the same publicly available evidence we have discussed, the identical anomalies in Martian imagery, the striking parallels between Earth and Mars structures, and arrived at the identical conclusion: Mars matters, Mars holds profound answers, and whoever reaches there first, possessing the capability to properly investigate, will undoubtedly unlock secrets that could fundamentally alter everything. NASA continues to dispatch rovers to Mars. Curiosity, Perseverance. Each mission meticulously gathers data, captures photographs, collects samples. Each mission is carefully designed to search for signs of ancient microbial life, not intelligent life, not artificial artifacts, not discernible structures, but microbial life. The parameters of the search are deliberately constrained. Find biological evidence that life once existed on Mars, but explicitly do not search for evidence of civilization. If you are already on the surface with sophisticated instruments, why not direct your cameras towards Cydonia? Why not maneuver your rover to the specific structures that researchers have definitively identified in satellite imagery? Why not definitively resolve the ongoing debate by intimately examining these formations up close? The technology demonstrably exists. The opportunity demonstrably exists. But the official mission parameters never explicitly include the investigation of potential archaeological sites, unless, of course, they already possess precise knowledge of what is present there. Unless Cydonia and similar sites have already been meticulously visited by classified missions that remain undisclosed. Unless the public Mars program is in reality a carefully managed disclosure process, incrementally feeding information, gradually preparing humanity for profound revelations that are inevitably coming, irrespective of NASA's control. The truth about Mars is steadily emerging. Regardless of official secrecy, independent researchers continue to meticulously analyze the identical imagery that NASA releases. They consistently discover anomalies. They publish their compelling findings. They build cases that become progressively harder to dismiss with each new piece of evidence. The control NASA once exercised over Martian information is perceptibly eroding as technology democratizes space exploration and analysis. Whatever they know, whatever they are deliberately concealing, the window for secrecy is irrevocably closing, and when it finally opens, the story that ultimately emerges will irrevocably rewrite human history. The question is not whether NASA knows. The paramount question is when they will cease pretending they do not. Something profoundly shifted in the last decade. After an arduous 40 years of dispatching robots to Mars while humans remained safely confined to low Earth orbit, suddenly there is a global, urgent impetus to journey to the Red Planet. NASA has concrete plans. SpaceX has ambitious plans. China has strategic plans. The European Space Agency has meticulously developed plans. Private corporations, billionaires, even reality television producers have announced audacious Mars missions. This is no longer merely scientific curiosity. This is an undeniable race. SpaceX founder Elon Musk has explicitly articulated his audacious goal to establish a self-sustaining city of 1 million people on Mars by 2050. Not a modest research outpost, not a temporary base, but a fully functional city. He has invested billions into the rapid development of Starship, a fully reusable spacecraft specifically engineered for Mars colonization. The sheer scale of his commitment is unprecedented in the history of private space exploration. No company has ever dedicated this magnitude of resources to a single planetary target without the promise of immediate economic return. Musk frames his profound Mars obsession as an essential insurance policy for humanity. Should Earth face a catastrophic event, an asteroid impact, a nuclear war, a climate collapse, having a backup population on another planet ensures the long-term survival of our species. But listen attentively to how he describes this mission. He does not speak of Mars as merely a new beginning. He speaks of it as a definitive destination humanity must reach, as if we are inexorably supposed to go there, as if something profound is patiently waiting for us. NASA's Artemis program intends to return humans to the Moon by 2025, establishing a permanent lunar base to serve as an indispensable stepping stone to Mars. The official timeline projects a human Mars landing by the late 2030s. However, these are merely public timelines. What transpires within classified programs, operating under black budgets and stringent military oversight, remains entirely unknown. The fundamental technology required for human Mars missions has demonstrably existed since the 1980s. We could have journeyed decades ago had the requisite political will and financial commitment been present. Now abruptly it is. Why? The groundbreaking discovery of subsurface ice on Mars irrevocably altered the game. Water is life support. Water is fuel. Water is essential for agriculture. Water represents everything a human settlement fundamentally requires. And Mars possesses water in astonishing abundance, preserved beneath its surface. Ground-penetrating radar from orbital satellites has meticulously mapped colossal ice deposits at readily accessible depth near the equator. This is not mere ice trapped in remote polar caps, requiring extreme environments to access. This is ice that conventional drilling equipment could reach in potentially habitable regions of the planet. The unequivocal presence of accessible water renders Mars colonization logistically feasible. But it also raises an even more profound question. If water exists there now meticulously preserved beneath the surface for millions of years, what else might be preserved? What structures? What artifacts? What advanced technology might exist within the very same environments we are now planning to excavate for human habitation? The lava tubes are particularly compelling. These are immense underground tunnels, formed by ancient volcanic activity, that riddle the Martian subsurface. Orbital imagery has positively identified lava tube skylights, hundreds of feet across, strongly suggesting vast tunnel systems large enough to comfortably contain entire cities. These tubes offer natural, crucial protection from lethal radiation, extreme temperature fluctuations, and micrometeorite impacts. They represent the ideal location for future human settlement. Crucially, they are also the ideal location for a prior civilization to have constructed subterranean cities when the surface became utterly uninhabitable. When humans finally journey to Mars, when we commence the exploration of these lava tubes for potential settlement sites, we will inevitably discover whether anyone else utilized them for the identical purpose. If a Martian civilization retreated underground as their planet slowly succumbed, the definitive evidence will reside within those tubes: habitation structures, advanced technology, possibly even remarkably preserved bodies in the cold, dry, radiation-protected environment that would function as natural cryogenic storage. Terraforming Mars has transitioned from the realm of science fiction into serious scientific discourse. The ambitious concept is to warm the planet, significantly thicken its atmosphere, and ultimately render the surface habitable without the perpetual necessity of spacesuits. Proposals range from deploying colossal orbiting mirrors to reflect sunlight and melt polar ice, to systematically releasing potent greenhouse gases from Martian soil, to redirecting asteroids to deliver immense quantities of water and volatiles. The projected timescales are enormous, centuries or even millennia, but the underlying physics is sound. Mars could be rendered habitable once again. But here is a profound thought. What if it has been attempted before? What if the Martian atmosphere we now perceive as a catastrophic loss was, in fact, the tragic outcome of a previous terraforming project that either failed catastrophically or was deliberately sabotaged? What if ancient Martians attempted to drastically modify their planet to survive the magnetic field collapse, and the very technology they employed either proved ineffective or inadvertently exacerbated the situation? If we unearthed definitive evidence of atmospheric processing facilities, sophisticated climate engineering equipment, or planetary-scale technology explicitly designed to preserve habitability, it would conclusively prove that a previous civilization not only existed but also possessed technological capabilities that we are only now beginning to theorize. The return to Mars is not merely an act of exploration, it is, profoundly, an archaeological endeavor. Every mission, every rover, every planned human landing is, at its core, an archaeological expedition, whether NASA officially acknowledges it or not. We are not journeying to Mars solely to search for microbial fossils in ancient lakebeds. We are going to definitively ascertain what befell the civilization that constructed the monumental structures we can already discern from orbit. We are going to determine if those ancient builders left behind anything, any technology, any records, any explicit instructions that could assist us in averting the identical fate that ultimately destroyed them. And perhaps at some level that governments will not publicly acknowledge, we are going home. If humanity truly originated on Mars, if we are indeed the descendants of refugees who fled a dying planet, then returning to Mars is not mere exploration. It is an act of reclamation. We are reclaiming our ancestral home. We are completing the epic journey that was tragically interrupted by an ancient catastrophe. We are survivors returning to survey what can be salvaged from the profound ruins. The pyramids on Earth might be far more than solemn monuments to the past. They might be explicit instructions for the future. Their precise astronomical alignments, their intricate mathematical encoding, their deliberate positioning relative to specific stars, all could constitute crucial navigational data. Journey to Orion. Follow these precise coordinates. Return to where we originated. The pyramids were constructed by desperate survivors, intended to guide their descendants back to the home planet when technological capability. We are now, finally, developing that very technology. Consider the profound psychological drive underpinning Mars exploration. It is not purely rational. The Moon is closer, more easily accessible, more practical for resource extraction and scientific research. Asteroids contain trillions of dollars in invaluable minerals. The outer solar system boasts moons with subsurface oceans, potentially harboring life. Yet, the overwhelming focus remains Mars, always Mars. The red planet captivates the human imagination in a way no other celestial body does. We dream incessantly about Mars. We craft intricate narratives about Mars. We build our entire space programs around Mars. This profound obsession cannot be explained by purely scientific or economic reasoning. Mars, by many metrics, offers less immediate tangible reward than many other potential targets. But we are inexplicably drawn to it, powerfully compelled toward it, as if something deep within our collective consciousness recognizes Mars as profoundly significant, as intrinsically connected to us in ways we do not consciously comprehend. Genetic memory, perhaps, cultural memory meticulously preserved in pervasive myths and enduring monuments, or simply the dawning recognition that Mars holds the unequivocal answers to profound questions about our own origins that we have been posing for millennia. The burgeoning billionaire space race offers another critical clue. Musk, Bezos, Branson, and other titans of industry are investing colossal fortunes into developing advanced space capabilities. These are not sentimental men, they are shrewd, calculating businessmen who discern opportunities that others overlook. What do they perceive in space and, specifically in Mars, that justifies such immense investment with no clear short-term financial return? Are they strategically positioning themselves to control Martian resources, to claim territory before governments can establish jurisdiction? Or do they possess access to privileged information suggesting Mars offers something far more valuable than mere minerals or scientific prestige? When the first humans ultimately land on Mars, and current projections indicate this will transpire within the next 10 to 15 years, they will carry an array of equipment specifically designed to search for biological traces, DNA sequencers, microscopes, spectrometers, but they will also carry high-resolution cameras, ground-penetrating radar, and specialized tools for excavation. They will meticulously explore the lava tubes. They will visit Cydonia if mission parameters permit. They will visually examine what previous missions could only photograph from orbit. And when they finally discover structures, when they unearth artifacts, when they stand inside facilities constructed by whatever intelligence once inhabited Mars, the profound questions we have been asking for millennia will at long last find their definitive answers. Were they human? Were they our ancestors? Did they encode their profound knowledge in the monuments they left on Earth before the last of them perished or departed? And most critically, did they leave behind any technology, any records, or any explicit instructions that could help us avoid repeating their tragic catastrophe? The return to Mars is now an undeniable inevitability. Too much momentum, too much investment, too many nations and organizations are absolutely committed to this singular goal. Within a single generation, humans will physically walk on Martian soil, meticulously explore Martian caves, and intimately examine Martian anomalies up close. The truth, whatever its form, cannot remain concealed once boots on the ground and discerning eyes are deep within the tunnels. We are going back to Mars, and when we arrive we will finally discover whether we are merely pioneers blazing new trails, or simply the lost children of Mars, at long last finding the courage to confront the ancestral home we lost so profoundly long ago that we forgot it was ever truly ours. The journey is beginning, the answers are patiently waiting, and the red planet, silent for so long, will finally reveal who we truly are. We commenced this investigation with a deceptively simple observation: pyramids on Mars, pyramids on Earth. And we meticulously followed that intricate thread through orbital imagery, ancient texts, inexplicable biological anomalies, precise astronomical alignments, and even the realm of conspiracy theories, to ultimately arrive here, at the precipice of a conclusion so vast it threatens to entirely reshape everything we thought we understood about human history. Let me be unequivocally clear about what we have examined. We have not definitively proven that Mars was the ancestral home of the pyramid builders. The research then expanded globally, identifying new tumor types responsive to this groundbreaking treatment. However, like all powerful medical interventions, immunotherapy is not without its challenges and limitations. Not all patients respond to immunotherapy, and some experience significant side effects, ranging from fatigue and skin rashes to more severe autoimmune reactions. Predicting who will respond and who will not remains a major hurdle, requiring ongoing research into biomarkers and patient stratification. The cost of immunotherapy treatments can also be prohibitive for many, raising ethical questions about equitable access to life-saving therapies. Despite these obstacles, the future of immunotherapy is undeniably bright. Scientists are continuously working to refine existing treatments, develop new targets, and combine immunotherapy with other modalities like chemotherapy and radiation to improve outcomes. Personalized immunotherapy, tailored to an individual's unique genetic makeup and tumor characteristics, holds immense promise. This involves detailed genomic sequencing of a patient's tumor to identify specific mutations that can be targeted by custom-designed immunotherapies. Such precision medicine aims to minimize side effects and maximize the treatment's efficacy, moving closer to a true cure for many cancers. The journey of cancer treatment has been long and arduous, marked by both breakthroughs and setbacks. Immunotherapy represents a pivotal moment, offering a new paradigm where the body's own defenses are harnessed to fight disease. It is a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance in the face of one of humanity's most formidable adversaries. As research continues and our understanding deepens, immunotherapy promises to transform cancer care, offering hope to millions worldwide.